Well, hello, and welcome back to the Manifesting Millions podcast. I am your host, Amy Van Meel, arbiter of joy and fan of all things fun. I'm delighted to have you here with me today. It's just me, myself, and I, which I suppose is a we, just finished the 10 episode series from the book, The Right Questions. I hope that you've enjoyed it. I'm very curious to hear if any of them really resonated with you. If they did, please hit me up on Instagram. You can find me at Amy Van Meel. Of course, we'll always link that into the podcast show notes so that you can find me. But just in case you're thinking about it right now, it's AMYVAN as in Norman, and then an M as in mother, EIJL. All one word. Reach out to me and say, hey, let me know what you loved about the episodes, which episode was your favorite, which one you're like, Amy, that fucking sucked. Also down to hear that. Can't change it, but interested to hear your thoughts. So I'm recording this in advance, which I suppose kind of makes sense. Most podcast episodes are. But by that I mean that I'm 2 weeks out from the wedding. At the time that this is going to be posted, it will be the Monday before the wedding. So if you can imagine, step with me into the future, which is your current present day. This week, I'm anticipating is going to be quite busy. So Monday, Tuesday, I'm working through my job. And then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, my love and I are off, and we are going to be building and preparing and cooking and doing everything that we need to while people are arriving and trying to get everything ready for the wedding. So I thought about the nice thing about having the book that I just did the series on is that it kind of gives me a topic every week, which has been really helpful. What I want to talk about this week is actually my relationship with Dave. And I don't have bullet points. I don't have a specific plan, but I'm going to channel through what I desire to share and what I think would be helpful. And I want to start and just kind of preface all of this with, first of all, there's no advice in here. I have not got it all figured out. There are definitely still days that I kind of want to toss him off the back of a truck and be like, I'm fucking done with you. But thankfully those moments are very few. And what works for us is not going to work for everybody, right? That just makes sense. So I trust that what lands and what is going to resonate with you will show up for you. So let's dive in. I want to go back to the beginning. I don't think I've ever told the story of how we met. We've been together for 10 and a half years at this point, which is kind of fucking wild to me. It's literally been more than 25% of my life has been shared with Dave. That boggles my brain because that's a very large percentage. So there's that. Before I met Dave, I've mentioned this from time to time. So I actually met Dave at the end of 2012 is how he sort of came into my life, and I'll share more about that. But 2012 itself was a year where if you looked at just about any possible area of my life, you would see that it was on fire. And not like a little oh cute, we can roast marshmallows. Like a fucking nuclear meltdown fire. Every part of my life melted away that year. Within the first, I think, week or two of the year, I got fired from my job completely without cause and with no fucking warning whatsoever. That was wild. Now, it was a job that I absolutely hated, and the boss was a tyrant. So it was a blessing, but it was very out of nowhere. I ended up having to move back into my mother's house, which meant that I was giving up my apartment, which meant that I was moving 2.5 hours away from where I had been living. So now my gym was gone. All of my friends were not nearby, or pretty much all of my friends were not nearby. So all of those support structures that I'd spent, I think I'd lived in Winnipeg 10 years at that point, all gone, right? It's very different. A week before I moved into my mother's house, I was dating this guy, and I was completely head over heels for this guy. I just thought he was just about everything that I wanted. He was tall and built and handsome and fucking cool as hell. And I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe that I get to be with this cool person. And he thinks I'm cool. And like, he's like, you're so fucking smart. And I'm like, yay, right? Like, this is the dream. I get to be with this guy who just thinks I'm the bee's knees. Anyway, also out of nowhere, a week before I moved into my mother's house, and he lived much closer he lived only half an hour away from there, whereas he lived 2 hours away from where I was before. A week before I moved out, he dumped me out of the blue. No explanation, just it was over. It's one of those moments that has sort of bounced around in my brain from time to time over the years of like, I don't understand what went wrong. And not that I'm sad that relationship didn't work out. It was so, now with hindsight, so very clear that it would not have been good and fruitful and healthy for me. But like, it just was so out of nowhere. Then I think 4 to 6 weeks, I can't remember how long I was there, but a short period of time after I had moved into my mother's house, I was kicked out by email, which was really extra hard. So I had to find another place to live. I had gone back I worked on a farm when I was a kid as a babysitter and a farmhand and doing all kinds of things. And so they hired me back on as a farmhand for the summer, which was good. I had just watched every possible, good part of my life dissolve, and I was lost. I had no idea. If you can imagine, I was so desperately unhappy. I would go for drives, and I would just pull into a field somewhere and sit there sobbing my eyes out, wondering why the fuck this was happening to me. And I remember this meme, it stands so clearly in my head, that I saw around this time, which was something like, God only gives us what we can handle. Apparently God thinks that I'm a fucking badass because like that was just, I was just looking around at this like, okay, I get that like things need to go, but like fucking everything. So that really sets the tone for 2012. It sort of continued on like that for a while. I had one friend who, oh my goodness, I would have survived without her. I don't believe that our lives hinge on one other person, but man, was she a savior for me. She helped me get moved. She came in and made sure I was doing okay. She'd go out partying with me. She got drunk on whiskey and cookies with me. Like she was the joy in my life. And I wasn't looking for anything else. I want to be very clear about that. So I wasn't looking for another relationship. I wasn't, any of those things. So fast forward towards the end of the year, I finally get a new job, which was the highest paying job I've ever had to that point. It was back in Winnipeg, which was amazing because I got to move back into the city that I actually wanted to be in. I got a new apartment, which was literally the next building over from where I had been living before, but completely renovated. Instead of being on the second floor with a neighbor upstairs, I was now on the third floor with nobody upstairs, much more better managed building. Just everything was like sort of starting to go in the right direction. And it was through my job that I actually met Dave. Now, at the time, I was in no state to meet anybody. Like, I was just like, oh my God, my life has just melted before my eyes. I am just going to figure out who I am and how to be for a little while. I had, of course, accumulated a tremendous amount of debt from the year, and my focus, I had a full-time job and I kept a part-time job. So I was working 6 or 7 days a week. My goal was to release that debt and move myself financially forward and to just be. I just wanted to be. Now, I do very firmly believe, I haven't heard anybody say this in years, so maybe it's because I run in different circles now, but like it used to make me so angry when people would say, you'll meet someone when you least expect it. And I'm like, well, that's bullshit, because if you are single and you want to be in a romantic relationship, you never stop expecting it. You're always hoping for that to happen. And so it never sat well with me. And also I was just like, I don't ascribe to this belief, because how do you stop expecting a thing, right? Like if I just go, okay, well, now I'm just not going to care about how I look, what I wear, how I present myself to the world, like chances are I'm probably not going to meet anybody. But I was in a space of just not, I wasn't out looking. I wasn't actively, not that I'm a terrible flirt anyway, like, not as in I flirt with everybody, as in I'm terrible at flirting. So it wasn't a skill that I had. I have never been cool a day in my life, and I am terrible at flirting. So, I was just in the space of, I just want to fucking do my job, get back into my life, rebuild, right? So I met Dave through my job. We worked for a Canadian company with offices all across from coast to coast. And within each office, there was one person that was responsible for this very technical building product. I did not realize when I got hired that I was going to be that person. That never came up. But I learned about 2-3 weeks in, oh, I'm the person who does this. Okay, cool. I'm someone who is very, very big on building networks and meeting people and making things fun. I am not about making work fucking tired and boring and blah. The company had gone through some interesting mergers, so there was a lot of like feels, and I was one of the first people coming in that I had no history with them, so I didn't know what was going on. I just came in with this fresh perspective. And also, I will just say, in a industry that is very male dominant, I was one of the few women. I think I was like one of 2 women maybe in Canada that like sold this particular product. Like, and I was like 40 years younger than the other person and very different in a lot of ways. And she was, I think, in Alberta. So anyway, so if you can imagine, you know, I'm surrounded in the office by all these like 50s, 60s kind of old grumpy guys. And I show up, I was 29. I was in amazing shape, because I will say one thing for 2012, I started running and I fucking lost weight, and man, was I in great shape when I moved into this job. And I got back to my kickboxing gym and all that kind of stuff. So I show up in heels, pencil skirts, blouses, you know, like that's how I dress. All the professional jobs I've worked, you dress nicely. Anyway, so Dave and I meet through work. We're just chatting. And at one point, we exchanged numbers, something related to an order that I had that I wanted to make sure was going well while I was off at a trade show with our rep. And we started texting that evening. I don't even remember why exactly, but we started texting. We texted back and forth for like 2 hours. And then Dave finally said to me, is it okay if I call you? Because this texting is like not really my jam. So I'm like, okay. And this is the first time that we talked on the phone. We talked on the phone at work, but this is the first time we talked on the phone outside of the scope of the office. So it felt kind of weird and awkward. But then we talked on the phone literally every day for like 2 or 3 hours. I think we met on, did we meet on Skype? No, we just talked on the phone. And at one point, probably about a month in or something, Dave says to me, I think I'd like to meet you. I think I'd like to fly out to Winnipeg. He was in Calgary, still is obviously because that's where I live. I'd like to come out and meet you. And I was like, sure. Like in my head, I'm like, there's no fucking way some guy from Calgary is going to fly into Winnipeg. If you're not familiar with Canadian geography, then it may not make sense to you, but like Winnipeg is not seen as like a go-to destination, right? It's in fact, its nickname is Winterpeg. It's known for being quite cold. It is not that in the summertime, I'm just going to say. But anyway, so I'm like, sure, of course you can come out. And then the next day he sent me this lovely email, I think, that was like, I'm just really curious to meet you. We get along really well. We have a lot in common. I have no expectations, but I would like to meet. I think there could be something here. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, yeah, I'm down to meet. Still, again, not thinking he's coming out. And then the next day I got his flight itinerary and went, holy fuck, he's actually coming out to meet me. What the hell? It was very interesting. It was a very, very different start to a relationship than any other relationship I'd ever had. But we were coming from very different times in our lives. So Dave's a little bit older than me. He had been married. He was in the process of getting divorced. So he'd been separated from his ex for some time at this point. And I don't think had actively been looking for somebody prior to this. I've asked him in the years since, and he said he dated a couple times, but never really seriously. But it just opened up this really interesting space for us. So I'm not going to go over the full 10 years because we'd be here for fucking ever. We're already 15 minutes in and we've only just met. But I want to share some highlights. So in the 10 years we were together, so we met through work, like I mentioned, after both of us went through some really difficult times. And I want to just pause here to share this one important point. I don't remember if someone told it to me or I just intuitively received this as a download. I've heard it since, but I don't recall where the source is. If you are looking for your romantic partner right now, and you're like, where is this person? Why can't I find them? It is very important to remember that for a relationship to work, it has to work on both sides. Both people have to be ready. Both people need to be in the position and space in their life to meet you and for that to work out. There's a very real possibility that maybe you're in a relationship right now, but you're kind of like, I feel like it's ending. I don't really know what's going on. Maybe you're that person for somebody else, but there's no space in your life right now for them, right? You're engaged with somebody else. I don't mean engaged like the ring. I mean engaged as in like you are connected with somebody else. So that really helped me in any of the times that I was single, and if I ever felt like stress about being single, to just remind myself of that, like, okay, I might feel like I'm ready for somebody, but the person who I'm supposed to be with also needs to be ready for me. So it's very possible that person right now is getting ready for me in whatever way that looks like. And it's so easy to go back and look at it now, right? To go in hindsight. But if Dave and I had met at any other time of our lives, it would not have worked for a bunch of reasons. The timing was very important. So I just want to say that if you're looking for somebody, remember, even if it feels like you're like, fuck, I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to, why is this person not showing up? Both of you have to be ready. So be patient. It'll come. So we dated for a year, flying back and forth from Winnipeg to Calgary, which was, if you've ever done long distance, it is not easy. A difficult way to start a relationship, let alone to like maintain a relationship. So we did that for a year, and decided probably about 8 months in that actually we wanted to take this to the next step. So I started getting ready to make the move from Winnipeg to Calgary. I moved like 13 months after the day that we met, I think, in person, because we met at the beginning of April and I moved to Calgary at the end of April the following year. And at that time, I was receiving some interesting like advice and concern from friends about what are you doing? And I think I've talked about this in previous episodes, but like, I've had friends who were saying, had somebody who went to Calgary and they didn't like it and it was this and it wasn't this and blah, 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 blah. And I knew that if I had any intention at all of making this work, of making it a successful shift in my life, I had to go with both feet in. I could not go 1 foot in and 1 foot out and kind of go, well, if this doesn't work out, I can just go back to Winnipeg. Well, let's just see how it works out. I always have this as a backup plan. I had to be all in. And that's not to say, the whole burning the boats kind of scenario. That's not it at all. But to go, I'm fully committed into this. And I'm going to step in fully. I'm going to be present fully. I'm going to give this my all. And hopefully it will work out positive. And if it doesn't, then I will figure that out if that happens. That's very, very important, especially if you're looking at making any major moves in terms of, well, just life in general, but I suppose relationships as well. So then we've been living together for 9 years, approaching 9.5 years actually now. We had some tough moments, okay? It's been interesting that I've had conversations with friends, and more importantly, like Dave's had conversations with people in his life where he shared this with me, where, you know, someone will go, like, you know, they'll be talking about relationships or wanting relationships or whatever else. And it comes up like, well, you and Amy just, that you seem so happy. Like, you always seem so in love and like everything's just so easy for you. And Dave's like, it's not though. You know, I'm not going to go any further than that because sometimes he said other things that I'm just like, yo, this is not my fault. FYI. I'm just not going to do that. But on the outside, while it looked good, like Dave and I, we don't argue in general, but we definitely don't argue in public. We might have brief words with one another. That's definitely happened, but it gets cut off pretty quick because neither one of us are interested in having arguments in public. And generally, like, it just doesn't make sense, right? Like, if you have an issue, have that conversation later. But it was not all sunshine and rainbows. We definitely had lots of good moments, but there was a number of years where I was back and forth over, is this where I'm supposed to be? Is this the person I'm supposed to be with? And there was a period of time, probably about, I'm going to guess 4 years ago. I don't actually remember for sure. I was miserable. He was miserable. It was so clear things weren't working. And we sat down and had a conversation. And I honestly thought that we were at the end of our relationship. There was a very likely possibility that we would break up and that would be done. And we took some time to think about it. And both are very clear about what it was that we wanted or needed. And ultimately, as it's clear because we're getting married in 5 days, made the decision to stay together. But that was a real dark night of the soul for us. And it's not one that, I also just realized that I'm sharing this without asking him permission. So here's hoping that he's okay with it. It's not one that we've talked about really publicly at all. How do you say to somebody, oh my God, we just about broke up last week, right? Like, that's not for anybody. But I was exploring, because I live in his house, I was exploring, where else am I going to live? What am I going to do? What's my next immediate step? Not, oh my God, what are the steps I need to do, like the 3 next steps? Just what's my next immediate one if we do decide to end this? And what was so interesting about that time and space was, for me, I don't know, I cannot speak to what his experience was in that moment, but for me, it led to this breaking point where I'm going to share the story of like holding a bird in your hand. And a coach that I've been working with at the time had shared this with me, the saying, like, if you hold open your palm and a bird lands in your hand, if you close your hand around the bird and you squeeze really tight because you're terrified that bird's going to fly away, you're going to kill the bird. But if you keep your hand open, yes, the bird may fly away, but it can, and it will be healthy, and it will be fine, and it will very likely come back. And I know bird's kind of like a loose analogy, but I was so terrified of letting go of my relationship with Dave. I didn't want the reality that we were living, but I didn't want to not be with him. But those two stood in conflict, and I didn't know my way forward. So being in this space where we had a very, very honest conversation of, fuck, this might be the end of us, finally, I think, helped me create a break to go, I can't hang on to this so hard anymore. It's killing both of us. So I did the, metaphorical, threw my hands up in the air and went, okay, if we stay together, we stay together. And if we don't, we don't. And I can't control that. And I'm going to figure out how to be okay with that. And that was fucking hard. I can feel the emotion now. It's fucking hard. It's something that you want so much and could be so good. And I had seen moments where our relationship had been so amazing. I was not okay with going, okay, I guess that didn't work out. But like, I was so over living the reality that we were living, because it was not healthy or happy or loving for either of us anymore. That made a huge shift. And over the years since, we actively have worked on our communication with one another. Something that we started doing some time ago was, so I bought this rug because I was like, how do I create a space in our house, like this container that like can hold some energy. So I bought a circular rug, and I basically said to Dave, okay, look, once a week, let's sit down here. I'm going to put 2 chairs on the rug, and each of us shares, something, like whatever's present for them. So like, let's say Dave had done something that really hurt my feelings, that I can share what had happened and how that made me feel. But he was expected to listen, but also respond. And that it couldn't be a deflection, right? So if Dave came to me and went, Amy, you said I was this real jerk about the way you parked your car or something, I can't respond and be like, well, you're a fucking jerk for driving my car. I don't know. Like, I can't deflect it off of me. I have to actually listen to what it was that he said and then go, okay. And if it was something that required a bit more, where maybe it needed some shift in behavior on either one of our sides, that together we had to figure out what that looked like. It could not be that I come to Dave and say, I'm having an issue with this, and he goes, I'm sorry about that, I hear you. What do you want me to do to fix it? And then I also have to come up with a solution, which, by the way, is what I had been trying for like 6 years and was going fucking nowhere. I was like, no, we need to come up with a solution together, because this is not one person's problem. This is something that's impacting both of us. And I'm not going to prescribe to somebody else how you got to live your life. That's not cool. So that was a massive shift for us. It helped us start to really open up some very real conversation. And by real, I mean that kind of like fucking deep vulnerability, not where you're sharing your deepest fears, but you're being really vulnerable with someone who has a tremendous amount of ability to hurt you if they wanted to. You could feel silly or embarrassed or whatever, but it was so, so, so important for our relationship. So that made a huge difference. And the beautiful gift on both sides. So on the one hand, I really started to finally feel heard, which was something that I was not feeling and had not been feeling for a very long time. The other thing was that because of the nature of the way that we had set up that space, being that both of us are to come or like have something to share here, it also, I think, really helped Dave find a way to voice his thoughts and concerns in his moments of challenge or friction. And those are tools that like, they are not taught, and if you have, I did not grow up with like thriving high communication relationships in my reality. That was not a thing. So there was no examples of what this could look like, right? Other than like movies, which are never correct anyway. So I was like, how do I lean into this space? But it gave us some really powerful tools that we still use to this day. So that was massive for us. And then over the years, really like leaning into that and figuring out, okay, like what's important and how do I, so I can only operate on my side of things. I can only say what is true and real for me. And however that lands or doesn't land or whatever with Dave, that's kind of out of my hands, right? But I've learned to, if I say something, especially if I say something 2 or 3 times where I'm just like, how do I need to say this differently? This appears to be not landing. That's a skill that I have actually translated into all of my work and my relationships with other people. Where if maybe it's a boundary that I'm setting, or maybe it's I don't know, something that I'm communicating to someone that I'm leading or whatever. But like, if something that I've said hasn't been, they're not picking up on it for whatever reason, even though they're like, yeah, I totally get it. I'm like, okay, then there's an issue with how I'm communicating this. So how do I change the way that I'm communicating a thing so that it actually lands with the person that I'm trying to communicate this with? And that has been a huge skill, an absolutely enormous tool of communication for me, and like I said, in every possible avenue of my life. So those are things that I learned from Dave. We're approaching, like I said, we're 5 days out from getting married. I have dreamed of getting married since long before I can remember. I was, just like every other little girl, dreamed of being a bride and like all the things. Our wedding looks very different than what it would have looked like when I was 9. I feel like that's probably true for most brides who are adults, but like it definitely has a lot of just different elements than it would have even 10 years ago. But the very amazing thing is that I've never felt so in step with someone. And that does not mean that we feel that way all the time. Okay. On the outside, even on the inside, our relationship looks pretty good. But it's not perfect. And there are moments where I'm just like, okay, am I sure that I'm going to be with this guy forever? Like, what's going on here? But I still find myself, and I have all the way throughout, marveling at the fact that I get to share my life with someone who I so deeply respect and admire, someone who is so unbelievably smart, someone who still 10 years in, I still think is sexy as hell. Like, I'm still just like, fuck, I get to be with that guy. That's amazing. Like, that is important. That was something that was very high on my list of this needs to happen in my relationship. Like those are really big deals. But he's also someone who can stand next to me and who isn't afraid of the big dreams that I'm going after and has never been concerned about like if I make more money or I have these huge goals. He's like, cool, like you do you. And he said very honestly from the very beginning, I have no interest in being a manager or, whatever, like becoming CEO of some company or whatever. And I'm like, that's cool. I just want you to do something that makes you happy. So long as it pays the bills, I don't fucking care. You could be the person who picks up the garbage. I don't care, but I want you to be happy. I want you to find some fulfillment in the work that you do. And ideally that it pays the bills. Like beyond that, those are the basic check marks that I have for your employment requirements. Anyway, I shouldn't laugh because I know there are people who are it's really important that their partner has a specific role, I suppose, but that was never, ever, ever on my list. So yeah, I'm mindful of the time because we're just over 33 minutes at this point. Maybe you didn't realize that. Maybe you're tired of hearing me talk about Dave, but then you would have stopped listening to this a while ago. I have no advice. I have no, I suppose, other intention in this podcast episode other than just sharing some of my experience. Excuse me. I apologize. I just realized that my glass of water is somewhere else. And this is the second episode I've recorded, so I've been talking for an hour without a sip of water. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say. So on that note, in a very weird segue, I've talked about this on the last several podcast episodes, and I probably should find a way to start talking about this at the beginning, but I tend to leave it to the end because I'm just focused on getting into our content. But I'm just going to mention again the Manifesting a Million Moments of Joy Masterclass. I would love to welcome you inside. If you go to amyvanmeel.com/joy, the URL is in the show notes. I'm having a moment where I'm like, I forgot to say the URL in the last episode, so sorry, but they're always in the show notes. You can sign up for the masterclass. You'll get instant access to the most recent recording, the most recent version of the masterclass. What I do want to say is that does not mean that anything before was crap. I don't put anything out that's crap. I might put a version 1 out and a version 2 and a version 3, and we might be on version 500 by the time you're listening to this episode. I don't know. But I want to make it continually better, more potent, more impactful, more tangible. So I am continually tweaking and altering and adjusting and like making it juicier and juicier and juicier. Here's the very cool thing. You get lifetime access to the course. So if you sign up today, you pay for the course today, you get instant access to the course today. You never have to pay for that course again, but you will have access to all of the future updates. I'm not fucking around when I'm talking about this. I have signed up for courses in the past that I've heard that say like, yeah, you get lifetime access. And then you find out, okay, you get lifetime access to like whatever version that is, but you get nothing of like the new updates or anything. And that felt very much like a bait and switch to me. But I have been in some courses that had true, honest to goodness lifetime access. And I just marvel at like, holy fuck, like I paid once for this and I still have access to this and it's getting better and better. Like what? That is my approach. So if you sign up, you get lifetime access to the course from now until it no longer exists, I suppose, which could happen at some point. Yeah, that was not a very good sales pitch. I feel like at the end of the last episode, I did a much better job. But in effect, if you're kind of like, what is this class about, Amy? Why are you just told me about how I get lifetime access forever and ever and ever, but I don't know what it's about. If you're wanting to create deep, lasting, fulfilling joy in your life, I am not talking about surface level. I am not talking about get their dream job, meet the amazing person, feel happy in your body. Those all sounded really flighty. That was not meant to be that way. All of those things are possible. And the truth is, I believe deeply that cultivating joy in your life is really opening the gateway for really like, what is the word that I'm trying to say? Like putting a jetpack on your manifestations. There's a different word that's somewhere in the ether of my brain and hopefully will come through. But if you really want supercharge, there it is. If you really want to supercharge your manifestations, then cultivating this essence and foundation of joy in your life is going to speed up your manifestations so much more. I just spent 35 minutes talking about my relationship with Dave. I could not have met Dave. I could not have brought him into my life if I did not already have some joy in my life. If I was this miserable old bag, he would not be interested in me. Somebody else might be, but like that's a whole different conversation. So, and if I look at, all of the things that I've created and manifested into my life and into my reality, a lot of them have this deep-rooted sense of joy. The other side that I just want to approach is, I know that so much out there talks about, crushing your goals and like, blah, blah, blah. And how many stories have we heard where people have said, I went out there and I got all the success. I got the fame. I got the money. I got the dream job. I had the, beautiful wife or husband. I bought this amazing house, but like, no matter what, I still wasn't happy. So this is focusing on the happy. This course is really about how do you begin building and crafting and solidifying the identity of someone who lives a joyful life, and that it remains joyful no matter what is happening around you. And that is truly the power of this masterclass, is that as you lean into it, and I've said this before and I'll say this again, if you're just hoping to watch an hour of like, somebody talking and that's all that it's going to take to change your life forever, it's not going to happen. You'll get a little bit, you'll maybe get like 5% of what would actually create change in your life. But if you want to create deep, lasting, and intentional change in your life, it does mean that you're going to have to take deep, lasting, intentional steps in your life. However, I make them as super easy and tangible as I possibly can, because I don't believe in taking huge actions. I believe in taking tiny actions and taking small shifts and those compounding over time. There's a beautiful compounding thing. Compounding over time to really build this deep, nourishing, fulfilling foundation. That is my focus in the Manifesting a Million Moments of Joy Masterclass. So I invite you, if it sounds in alignment for you, if you're like, fuck Amy, I want to feel happier in my days. I want to feel more resilient when things kind of go sideways. I want to be able to bounce back faster, right? Like if that sounds like what you're looking for, then please come join me in the masterclass. And then I've got like 4 minutes left before my little recording thing cuts me off, which is a good thing. And I goofed. So a couple episodes ago, I don't remember which episode, but I was talking about, I think, self-care, and I was talking about Netflix and chill. Do you know, I did not know what Netflix and chill stood for. So if you listened to that episode and laughed your ass off at me, you're very welcome for the moment of joy. Apparently, Netflix and chill as a phrase, if you were not aware, is slang for watching Netflix and then getting nasty with whomever you're getting nasty with. I legit thought it was watching Netflix and chilling out, bowl of popcorn, glass of wine. Why do we take common phrases and turn them into something completely different? As someone who has just never been cool in her life and does not stay on top of all of the language, I'm just like, wait, what? I have been saying this wrong using it wrong for 4 years. So cool. So anyway, shout out to my friend who reached out to me after listening to that podcast episode and was like, I listened to your episode and it made me giggle and it made me think of this, and sent me a YouTube video where Kelly Clarkson was sharing that she had only just learned what Netflix and chill meant like a hot minute ago and was like, OMG, I've been using this wrong. So I've been using this wrong. And also, I will probably continue to use it. And just for future reference, when you hear me say Netflix and chill, I literally mean watching Netflix and chilling out on the couch. Okay? If you decide to get freaky afterwards, good on you. But that is not how I use that phrase. Oh, on that note, have an amazing rest of the day. When I come back to you next, I will be a married woman, which is going to be a very weird space, but I'm excited about it. So there's a possibility that there won't be an episode next week, but stay tuned. Who knows? I might be in the flow and just have a whole bunch of podcast episodes recorded. All right? Thank you so much for listening. I so appreciate you being here with me. If this episode resonated with you, please leave a review. I would love to have you... what would I love to have you do? I'd love to have you share the episode. Share it with someone who you feel might benefit from it or might be interested in it, or just wants to hear my ridiculous understanding of Netflix and chill, and go from there. I wish you a wonderful rest of the day. Bye for now.